system in place to keep us in chains. By a show of hands, who else is sick and tired of the same? 1% trying to keep us small, trying to keep us from getting out. Minimizing the struggles they've caused, saying we're not working hard enough.
We really should stop this fighting. Otherwise, we'll miss the fireworks.
There won't be any fireworks.
And here we go.
And welcome everybody to Suck It. I am the great and powerful King of Kings, Prince of all that is awesome, Derek. How the fuck is everybody today on this Monday, December 14th of the horrible year that has been 2020? Coming off of a successful, very successful charity stream that we did on Friday with many bands and comedians and everything like that. 7 hours worth of content. I do want to thank everybody again for joining us, and for the ones who performed, thank you again. It was a long night, but it was well worth it. We raised over $2,000 for Toys for Tots, so thank you very much for that. That is fantastic. And we're still running that donation drive through Toys for Tots the rest of the month. Hopefully it'll hit that $5,000 mark. But if nothing else happens, the rest of the month, at least we did 2,000. So I'm very, very happy with that. So thank you very much again for that. However, tonight starts a new week. A new week is upon us. We're about a week out, a little bit more than a week out, almost 2 weeks out from Christmas. And the end of the year, things are moving along nicely, and hopefully we'll have a vaccine soon so we can start freaking touring again. Like, I can get on stage and tell jokes, and hopefully my guest tonight can get back on stage and start singing music and playing music that he loves to do. Because tonight I am joined by the lead singer of the band Actual Villains, and I'm really, really happy to have him on with us tonight because excuse me, I can't even talk today. Because he just recently released a cover of R.E.M's Losing My Religion. And let me just tell you what, it is phenomenal. Band's been around since 2015. After taking a brief hiatus, came back in 2019 with the release of their song Void. And now we're back again with this amazing cover. So please, without any further ado, welcome to the show from the band Actual Villains, Andrew. What's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, Derek. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem, man. It's been a weird year. Hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you can say that again.
Yeah, I mean, from a creator point of view, someone who's, a stand-up comic, and a former musician who used to tour as well, it's one of those things where you miss that crowd. You miss that adrenaline rush from the crowd. You miss that interaction with people in general, and haven't gotten much of it this year. However, there's still people out there creating, preparing for this, hopefully to blow over, and create some type of new normal. What has been you and, the rest of you guys, been, doing to prepare for it? Obviously, you just released a new single, which, holy shit, I never thought I would headbang the way I did to freaking, R.E.M, the way you put it together. Just phenomenal. The composition you put together for that is amazing. So, other than that, what else have you guys been doing this year to prepare for, hopefully, what's going to bring us in the new year?
Well, the plan was actually just to kind of build a lot of material and content so that we could really come out strong in 2020. We really wanted to follow up that single Void in 2019. And we had been pretty actively in the studio working, writing, and honestly, some of the best material we ever have put there. I'm so proud of. The whole year was kind of just a kick in the teeth, right around March or so when things started shutting down. It kind of just put a dampener on us being able to get back in the studio and actually finish record, stuff like that. So it's been touch and go as far as getting, the ideas down on paper and actually executing them. But that said, we have built up a decent little arsenal of stuff that we are going to start releasing here soon, and I'm really super excited about that stuff.
So, why losing my religion? Why was that the thing to release this year? What made you decide to cover that song? Because I mean, it's not so much of an obscure song by any means, but for someone of the type of music that you do, it's definitely out there. So, what exactly made you want to redo that song and do it the way you did and release it now?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. So, I mean, I had actually other original songs planned on releasing first. And what it really came down to was a sense of timing. I don't really like doing cover songs. It's never been my forte by any means. And this is just a song that's always been with me. And since I was a kid, I mean, I don't want to age myself too much, but I was a teenager, in the early 2000s and in the 90s. I remember R.E.M. still being a really prevalent band. And this is kind of one of those songs that through the decades just kind of stuck with me. And I wasn't only till a few years ago that I think I ever actually came to understand what the song meant. I kind of always took it as face value, like losing my religion is like a sense of like, losing your faith in something. But what I came to learn was that REM is from the Atlanta area in the South. And the term losing your religion has kind of a different meaning down there. It kind of means like losing your patience, like losing, it's like you think about like a mild-mannered person's like they're saying like I'm about to lose my religion, meaning like I'm gonna lose my cool. I'm gonna just like I'm at my wit's end. I'm at the end of the rope. Like you pushed me too far, and I'm gonna lose it. And it was funny. I came to that realization during this year, during this kind of period where a lot of uncertainty and a lot of stress and anxiety and it just kind of felt even more relevant when I started to understand what that song really meant. And I just found myself like everywhere I was going, it just kind of kept popping up. I'd be in a store and it'd be on the radio, and I'd get in my car and somewhere, a day later and it'd be on. And it was like, it kind of just kept trickling in after a while. I kept singing along to it, and I kept kind of hearing this harder version with my voice in it. And I was like, man, this would be so cool to do this if I could just put this together. And to be honest, some of my producer friend that I wrote this with, he was really apprehensive too. He actually didn't want to do it at all. And I had to kind of convince him to give it a chance. And once we started getting it tracked, he was like, okay, I see the vision now. I got like the intensity, the intention of this song. And I just kind of like, felt like I had a new understanding of the song and the right timing of what's been going on. I just wanted to capture that anxiety, anger, that feeling of almost hopelessness, and just put it into that song and let it kind of build and go for a ride. Yeah. Kind of take that song where I think emotionally it's always wanted to go.
Wasn't that also Michael Stipe's coming out song, if I'm not mistaken, or something along those lines? It was one of his songs was kind of his coming out song. I thought it was "Losing My Religion." I thought it was maybe attached to it. I mean, I haven't researched it in a long time, but I remember something else being attached to either that song or something else that was along those lines too. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I could have sworn it was.
I know self-professed REM, savant or expert here. I've always had an appreciation for the band, and like you said, alternative rock is almost kind of a stretch from our genre. Like I've almost been typecasted through most of my musical life in heavy metal and pop punk and stuff like that. And so, but I always had an appreciation for especially 90s, alternative rock. That was kind of all the stuff I grew up on. And, to say that's not an influence would be kind of ignoring, who we grew up as. So
exactly, yeah.
I won't choose to pretend that I'm not who that is, It's kind of the indicative of the time period in which I grew up.
Absolutely. I mean, very few of us came out of the womb listening to Pantera and Megadeth. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we came out, listening to whatever our parents listened to and then found our own. I mean, for me, it was...
Yeah, we had to get to at least 3 or 4 before we really learned how to get the horns up and headbang.
Exactly. For me, it was Michael Jackson and Prince that got me into music, and then Metallica. I mean, it was a weird journey I took, but to get to the metal genre, I had to learn an appreciation for the music business itself, and I found that through Michael Jackson and Prince, who are 2 of my biggest influences of all time as far as musically goes.
I mean, arguably two of the greatest musicians of all time. I would take that agreement with you as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's a few others up there. However, they've, they dipped off before they, after they became great. Eric Clapton being one of them, one of the greatest guitar players of all time, but where's he been at for the last 10 years? So, I mean, Michael Jackson and Prince never fell off up until the point where they died. And so that's where I'm kind of going off of that. But yeah, I mean, it's stupid for me to even say the same thing. Back in the day, in the 90s when I was a teenager, I'm dating myself. It was Pearl Jam, it was, definitely R.E.M. was in there. It was, Soundgarden, all the stuff that was, post, 80s hair metal, that supposed grunge sound, which never really, came through to me. I never saw it as grunge. I just thought it was as rock and roll. It was just good rock, alternative style rock. And then all of a sudden, everything else kind of started changing to the heavier stuff. I discovered Pantera and, like I said, Metallica and all this other stuff. And, it's definitely shaped who I am today. So, yeah, to ignore that style of stuff. I mean, even the Cranberries and, everybody else around that same time.
Hey, Alanis Morissette.
Oh my God. I mean, Jagged Little Pill is still, in my personal opinion,
one of the greatest albums of all time.
One of the greatest rock albums of all time. Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
And when I
think it deserves such credit. I bet you there's a lot of death metal guys out there who when that comes on, they're belting that shit out.
I remember, I think it was something that Sirius XM did. And I could be completely wrong, but they were doing a best rock songs of the 90s, and Alanis Morissette, what's it called? You Ought to Know was in the top 10. And I completely agree with it. I mean, Taylor was her drummer for, who's now the freaking drummer for the Foo Fighters. I mean, you can't argue, her influences. She had Slash on that album and all this other amazing people. You can't deny that album. So I don't care what anyone says about that one. That one's definitely one of the greatest rock albums of all time.
Hey, this may be strange ideas, but I'm with you 100% out here.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you do, because most people kind of look at me and go, "Are you serious? What's wrong with you?"
Like, come on, act like you don't think Huey Lewis in the News is one of the hardest things you've ever heard in your life as well.
Exactly.
Shit I came up on, and I loved it.
I mean,
head banging hard.
Yeah, I mean, do I love my, my heavy, my metalcore and all this other stuff? Absolutely. Do I listen to that 99% of the time? Absolutely. But if Paramore comes on the radio, am I going to rock out to some, hell yeah, I'm going to rock out to some Paramore. She fucking kicks ass. Haley Williams is amazing.
Hell yeah.
Or if, again, Prince or Michael Jackson or R.E.M. comes on, I'm not going to ignore it, but at the same time, it's not my lifeblood, but at the same time, it's something that definitely has a huge influence on me, and obviously you. So, that song, when it first starts playing, you definitely get the Michael Stipe vibe, and you definitely hear the influence behind it. But then all of a sudden, the chorus hits, and it takes a completely left turn on it, but it's, I think it makes it just as powerful. The message. You take it up to a higher register. You start, a mild mannered scream. It's definitely not a hardcore scream, but you definitely scream it and you belt it out, and it hit me. So I listened to that song 5 times today, to be totally honest with you. Yeah, it's so freaking good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what you did with it, you definitely did right by it, put it that way.
Well, I'll tell you what, too. I mean, I wouldn't have put this song out if I didn't think I was going to not be able to do something different with it. It's a song that is not only been so prevalent, a lot of great artists have covered it, and it's, if I didn't think I could bring something different to it, I don't think I would have touched it at all. And a large credit of that goes to my producer and guitar player, my friend Hiram Hernandez, who's just an incredible talent, an incredible visionary too. He really, he mixed and produced it and played on it, and he's just an incredible musician and producer.
Yeah, I mean, as far as covers go, if you're just going to go up there and pay tribute to a song, that's all fine and dandy. Don't get me wrong. If you can pull it off, pull it off. But for me, what makes a good cover is when you make it your own, and it makes it sound like it's your band, your music. No matter what, people will listen to it and go, yeah, that's definitely them. But if you just try to play the song exactly like they did, just as to pay tribute to them, you run the risk of being compared. You run the risk of not doing it as well, and there's so many other things that can happen, and it's got to be different. For example, when Shinedown covered Simple Man, however long ago was that? 20 years ago, something like that. Brent Smith, was it that? How long ago was that? Was it about that long ago?
It was early 2000s, so yeah.
Yeah. So when he covered Simple Man by Leonard Skinner, they did it almost identical to it the first time. They had two versions of it. They had an acoustic version of it, and then they had the big band version of it. But the acoustic version of it just sounded exactly the way the Van Zandt, family did it, back in the 70s. And I was like, ooh, you're running too risk. Brent, you're an amazing vocalist, you're an amazing musician, but dude, you're running a risk here. But then they redid it, and they came out with a bigger version of it, which was, in my opinion, better. But I think that happens all too often when bands do covers. They try to remake something that's classical in the way that they did it, just modernize it. Well, don't do that. Make it your own. You run the risk of being called karaoke at that point, too.
Yeah, exactly. And new songs that were composed and getting ready to put out, there's a kind of a range. I mean, like you mentioned, this song has some kind of melodious screaming, singing. There's definitely some heavier material coming down the pipe as well. I mean, one of the more heavier songs I've done in a long time, coming out soon. I guess I'll just go ahead and let people know it's called "Smile Through the Pain," and it's just this kind of another message about just bearing and grinning and facing through all this stuff and trying to move forward and trying to keep going when everything around you feels falling apart. And I think it's just another kind of more relevant song. A lot of people understand that feeling these days, especially when they're faced with job loss and evictions and health issues and loss of family and friends and stuff. There's just a lot of pain to be had in this world right now. So that's the flip side of the silver lining of this horrible year, is that it has been an inspiration for a lot of great art, and I will say it's definitely been an inspiration for me.
Yeah, and that's what I've been, preaching a lot on this show, is the fact that there are the unemployment rate is higher than it's been in a long ass time right now, and luckily a lot of those people are living on severance packages, or they're living off of unemployment, or whatever the case might be. However, some of them are sitting at home saying, woe is me. I can't find another job. Oh, well, at least I have this income coming in. I'm just going to sit around and apply for jobs all day on Indeed and watch reruns of Friends. But then there's those that are out there saying, okay, what did I want to do when I was 5 years old? What did I want to do when I was 10 years old? Let me try to see if I can make that happen. Let me see if I can make that a reality. This is the opportunity to reinvent yourself this year and really punch life in the face and say, I'm taking control. If you are one of the, unlucky, ones that are sitting at home right now, listening to this on your radio or watching it on YouTube, what have you done this year to make that change? Because, I advocate hardcore on this show for mental health. Because I'm bipolar and I used to be suicidal and I've had many attempts and so on and so forth. And when I hear, stuff like that, it just makes me smile so large about people talking about it, whether it's directly mental health related or just shitty circumstances related. It's all mental health. But, the music community as a whole has really started to, grab life by the horns, in the last few years when it comes to these types of topics, whether it be mental health or suicide or whatever the case might be. And I absolutely love it, because the name of the show, Suck It, isn't, a reference to anything else other than mental health. It's for anyone who ever was told you in life to suck it up, you tell them to suck it. That's what it means. It's not a reference to Degeneration X and Shawn Michaels from the '80s and from the '90s and WWE and stuff like that. No, it's a direct reference to that. And whether it be Falling in Reverse, doing Popular Monster last year, or all the other bands that have come out with great mental health related songs, it's like, thank you, because and now you said you're getting ready to come out with one similar, and it's like, thank you again. What are you doing to make it better for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I had a great inspiration years ago. It's like 2012 or something like that. My old band was touring with Attack back when Caleb Shomo from Beartooth was their vocalist. Mm-hmm. And he's a really inspiring, really original, really real, down to earth kind of guy. And we had multiple talks, and both publicly and privately, about addiction and depression and anxiety and all these other things. And one of the things that really stuck with me is he had this great attitude about just understanding that happiness is a choice. And, you choose to wake up every single day and to be happy. Your circumstances can be absolute shit, but you can choose to be happy, or you can choose not to be. And it's sometimes, it sounds like oversimplified, but, you're presented with these choices 1,000 times a day, and it's up to you ultimately to decide how you feel, to take that over yours where you can. And it's a hard lesson to learn, but the more you apply that willpower to say, like, I can be positive, I can do something better with this, like you said, we've all free time. In a lot of cases, a lot of us have sat around, collected unemployment or something. Like, maybe that's that time to learn that new language you always wanted to know, on a free app. Or maybe it's time to pick up that guitar and learn how to play guitar. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's time to spend more time with your kids and, embrace your family and your loved ones. If this year's taught us one thing, it's that you never know what's going to happen next. So you might as well embrace every moment and every day.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just a year of reinventing yourself. I mean, I've started this podcast before the pandemic started. However, due to circumstances like I was just mentioning, I lost my job and I made this my full-time job. And, I've been lucky enough to do so, to where I have the listenership, I have the sponsorship and stuff like that. I'm able to do that. But at the same time, I could have just sat at home and said, woe is me, and sat at home and did nothing, and hoped something would happen. But I'm not like that, and I hope other people aren't like that as well. I mean, my wife, made a huge life decision this year too, to take back control of her life, and decided that she didn't want me and is wanting to divorce me. So, hey, everyone makes decisions. So, it's one of those things that just.
I wasn't expecting that twist.
I know. I see. I'm a dark humor comic. I love dark humor, and as real as that is, I have to make jokes about it. Otherwise, I'll go crazy. Being a bipolar person, if I don't joke about the bad things going on in my life, I lose my shit. But
hey, laughter is the best medicine. Truly,
it really is. And her and I are fine. We're amicable about everything. So she's still living here, and she's not leaving until the end of the month. But I like to joke about it and bust her chops for it and shit like that, of course. But it's all about making your life what it needs to be to make yourself happy. Because again, it is a choice. Yeah, there's other underlying circumstances, whether it be being bipolar or being a paranoid schizophrenic or whatever else the case might be. But the thing about it is, if you're constantly in that state of depression, if you're constantly not doing anything about it, then you're making that choice to not be happy. You're making that choice to not do anything about it. But the moment
that you fall into that routine,
exactly.
It's like the more you live in that, the more you embrace those feelings of negativity, the easier it is to just fall right into it. Those thoughts, those feelings, those depression moments, those of hopelessness, the more you live in that realm, the harder it is to escape it. So if you have this constant mentality of countering that with positivity, with even if you kind of have to fake it till you make it. Sometimes you have to literally just wake up and be like, you know what? There's a lot of things I don't like about myself, but there's a lot of things I do like about myself. And today's another day to be better. And I can use the time I have and I can improve something. Maybe it's a little thing. Maybe it's that you just got out of bed. Sometimes it's just literally that you got out of bed and did some dishes or something. You're like, cool, I accomplished something today. Like, it's little things. People put so much pressure and like trying to hold a candle up to somebody else and what they're doing. And if I compare, you know, what my band does to the bands that I used to tour with or friends that I have, like, you know, all I ever focused on was what I don't have. You know, it's a negative experience. But if I sit back and I watch every play come in and go, wow, I'm grateful. That's amazing. Another person is out there listening to my music. Yep. Another person hit play and hit it again. You know, I'm just grateful for every moment in this life I have. I'm grateful for every play that comes through on every song I write and record. And I'm grateful for every person that takes their time and their energy in life to share with me. So,
dude, I that what you said in there really hit home, because it's 100% what I do on a daily basis. That whole fake it till you make it sit. You know, it's, you know, a lot of people think I'm egotistical and arrogant, and I am, but it's all fake. It's, you know, it's to give that persona of I have self-confidence, because I don't. You know, I come on here and I do what I got to do to make sure that I'm surviving. So, you know, whether it's music or whether it's this or whether it's comedy or woodworking or whatever the case might be, you're never going to do it if you never try. So, you know, it's about making that decision and making that choice in order to, you know, better yourself. You know, here's a good example. You know, whether it be, let's just strictly talk about music. You know, bands break up all the time. You know, you guys, you know, you were in a former band and you made a decision to continue on and come up with a new band and a new idea. Or another band, you know, loses their drummer or loses their guitarist to an ugly, you know, drug, you know, induced death or whatever the case might be. And sometimes they just say, oh, it's too much for us, we're moving on. Or, okay, let's go ahead and make some decisions and, you know, try to live on in their honor or whatever the case might be. Those are choices to make themselves happy and make themselves, you know, better as people. You know, and you guys did that in 2015. So what led to what you're at now? What led to what led to the breakup? And then what led to today? Because there's a couple different things that happened to today as well, because it started in 2015. You released a single in 2016, and then it went away, and then you came back in 2019, and now you're here today. So what exactly led to this point today?
So the road goes a little bit further back than that even, but so this project kind of stemmed from a band called Close to Home. And we used to be signed to Artery Recordings and Razor and Tie Records. So, you know, we shared a label with like Pretty Reckless and Hate Breed and a couple of like pretty substantial bands. And, you know, that kind of fizzled out slowly. We had pretty prolific things. We had a theme song for the Olympics in 2013 for Sochi. You know, we had toured around the world and Europe and US, Canada and such, and kind of built a pretty good name for ourselves. And then one of the founding members quit, and it just kind of got to a point where we didn't want to continue on as the same band when the only original founding members kind of weren't in it anymore. And, you know, we've seen other bands do that in the past. There's not necessarily something wrong with that. It just wasn't the path we wanted to go. So we kind of set about rebranding. And that's when I came up with the name Actual Villains. And it just kind of was an evolution of that band Close to Home. And they were based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I saw your Ohio State jacket. So I actually lived out in Cincinnati for like 3 years while we were the most actively touring and stuff. And, you know, I ended up moving back out west to Arizona and tried to kind of keep things going for a little while back and forth with the previous members Close to Home that I had originally been writing with. We put out an EP in the beginning of 2016. And then that was the same year I moved out here. And then it just kind of spent the next couple of years dead in the water. I kind of was trying to get them to work with me back and forth, and the distance just kind of let things fall on the wayside. So I ended up meeting and becoming friends with a label mate from Razor and Tie, a guy named Hiram, who was in a band called The New Low. And him and I started writing and recording in his studio. And there's a couple of songs I'm about to put out. The first one, actually, I'm pretty sure the very next one is the first song I wrote with him almost 3 years ago. And so it's been kind of a journey slowly of getting in there when I can, because it's all self-financed. I don't have the record label behind me anymore. So, when I have the money and the time, I sit down with him and we write and record stuff. And then we've worked with producers like Matt Good, who's incredible. He's done like Asking Alexandria and From First to Last, with Carson, The Dangerous Sound, and several incredible metal bands as well. So I've had the opportunity to really dial it in and get some cool stuff together, but it's been a long road.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds that way, and unfortunately, that it can be that way. But one of the great things about this year, as we've been, kind of talking about too, is, for the self-financed bands, for the indie bands, for the ones that are out there, busting their tail this year, trying to create and trying to make a name for themselves. The great thing about it is, with the exception of like Taylor Swift, who released 2 albums during this pandemic, there's not many other people, not many other groups that are releasing stuff right now. One of the biggest bands in the rock genre, Avenged Sevenfold, even put out an email a month or two ago saying, hey, we have an album ready to go, but we're not going to release it until we can tour. Thanks. We appreciate you telling us that you have an album ready to go, and now we got to wait longer for it. I'm one of their biggest fans ever. I have an Avenged Sevenfold tattoo, for Christ's sake, and all it did was piss me off, because it was like, guys, we need you right now. Okay, fine.
Right.
So you know what? When that happened, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make it a point to mine to only talk to indie bands for the next 2 months. And that's all I've done is talk to indie bands for the last 2 months. Because you know what? You guys are out there, pounding the pavement, figuratively or literally, and doing everything you possibly freaking can to, make a name for yourself. And it's been fantastic. For me to be able to open up Spotify and see featured artists this week, and see some of the bands that I've talked to on there, it's like, holy shit, thank God. They're getting their dream, they're getting their wish, because they're not competing on a Tuesday or a Friday with the big bands releasing singles or albums. Now they're only competing with each other, who are helping each other out and promoting each other and talking about each other, when that's not something that the rock industry typically does, because of big record labels saying, hey, no, don't you promote them. I don't want them anywhere associated with us. They're a great band. I don't care. Don't you talk about them. And unfortunately, that happens all the time. But now it's like, you know what? Forget this. Let's all, bind together and get our names out there. And it's been fantastic for everybody, including yourself. So I think that's awesome.
It's very freeing to not be restricted by, the kind of label and management team influence and stuff like that. I mean, even with the music, I would say I've got a handful of songs finished now, and each one of them is kind of different. And, I think in a lot of cases, someone probably would have came along and been like, you need to make this a little bit more cohesive. I had a little bit more fun with it and had more of a free flow with these songs, and just said, I've got a range of influences from the 90s and 2000s to today, and I'm gonna put them all in where I see fit. So, why not?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's a metal fan, and knowing when I say metal, there's 510,000 freaking, subgenres of metal. I don't care if I open up an album and listen to it cover to cover and there's 10 different genres of metal inside that album. What does it matter? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, you've got label people saying, hey, you got to stick to the same genre, or you got to do this, you got to do it this way. And then there's the hardcore fans that say, oh, sorry, I won't listen to this and this because it's not metalcore. This is like more like a thrash type sound. I don't like thrash. I'm only going to listen to 3 of their songs on an album because it's more metalcore. That's what I listen to. So it's like, Jesus Christ, can't we just support the band and, whatever? One of my favorite albums to come out in the last couple of years was by a band called Ice Nine Kills. And
oh yeah, very familiar with them.
So they released in 2018 the Silver Scream, which was a song. Every song was dedicated to a horror flick. But the thing about it is, there's so many different. They hit on like 10 different genres of metal in that album, and it's one of the best-selling albums. And they toured for 2 years straight on that album before the pandemic, and now it's like, they get the love that they deserve. But at first, they were catching a lot of shit because there was nice song, nice soft songs where he would just nothing but sing, and then there's literal death metal on there, and then there's little thrash, and then there's hardcore, and then there's metalcore, and then there's this and that. It's all over the place, but I like that. I don't want to listen to 12, 13 songs that sound similar, all the time from 10 different bands that all in that same genre. I like to mix it up a little bit, and that's why I love metal, not any of the subgenres, just metal. I don't care if it's Volbeat. I don't care if it's Slipknot. I will have that on my. It mixes it up. It's nice. It's a good thing. So I'm glad you're doing that.
Good points. Metal is so diverse, and there are decades worth of different sounds and techniques and styles, and I've been influenced from everything from the hair metal bands of the 70s and the 80s to the industrial and death metal and hardcore and metalcore and you name it, pop punk and screamo, and you kind of there's just, it's such a wide diversity, and I don't think that listeners anymore necessarily listen to the same nonstop. I think that the average listener sort of evolved a bit, even to the point where people don't sit down and listen to an album back as often anymore. It's more of a playlist style culture of bouncing around from one thing to the next and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It keeps things really interesting. And so in my mind, I thought I want to write music the way that I like to listen to music.
Yeah.
And like you said, as much as I love Metallica and Slipknot, and I don't typically sit down and listen to 10 or 12 Metallica or Slipknot songs in a row. I'll listen to 10 or 12 songs in a row that are in the same genre, radio style, where it's throwing in different stuff. And so, I think it's all true to being metal. Some's more anthemic and more, radio rock style, and some of it's heavier and swing, some of it's, borderline industrial. But I don't, that's the fun things about working within the confines of the genre of metal is that there is almost no confines.
There isn't. And when you start, trying to, subgenre it's when it starts to get complicated, and, bands try to fit into a certain thing, and then this or that. Fans try to sit into a, certain thing, and it doesn't work for me. And I've never been a big fan of that. So I'm glad that, you're saying what you're saying, because it's what I believe in as well. And you also brought up something else that, music today is more of a playlist style. And one of my favorite bands who gets a lot of hate because of their lead singer is Falling in Reverse. He came out earlier this year and said, "Hey, we're never going to release another album. We're only going to release singles." Okay, that's cool. That's great. Mm-hmm. I think that's a cool thing as well. Because in the last 15 years, I can remember a handful of albums that I've listened to cover, because sometimes they just throw in the towel and just write 5 extra songs just to make it an LP versus an EP. And it's not really the best sounding stuff. Some of the best sounding stuff that I've seen or heard, that's full length albums have been, concept albums, and where they actually put the time and effort in to make sure that every song, tells that story that they're trying to tell or has that same theme, and they actually put that effort in. But it's when an album that doesn't have that type of theme over the last 10, 15 years, they just kind of say, okay, here's 10 songs that works. Let's just do this. And it sucks. But at the same time, when they're putting all their effort into a single and making the best music they can, and they're doing that 5-6 times a year, okay, that's great too. So where music takes us in the next 10 years is going to be interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with Ronnie's theory on that too. I think that it's almost become an old world idea of a full album. I think people don't have the attention spans for it. And originally, those albums, like you said, were written around 1 or 2 singles, and then the rest of it was just other songs that sound kind of like that. And that was, there were a few, obviously, you have bands like Pearl Jam, like you mentioned earlier, whose albums like were literally nothing but incredible songs front to back. But it wasn't common. It was a lot of people just kind of mailed it in the rest of the album, and they had 2 or 3 good songs, and the rest of it was like, well, we'll just make stuff that will appeal to these listeners. And with this idea of releasing, every song kind of has its own moment in the sun. It has its own moment to shine. it can be a little bit different. You can be experimental and avant-garde. You can do something you've never done or something your fans don't expect from you. And you know what? If they hate it, cool. They can hate it 8 weeks until the next song comes out, and then they can either hate the next one. Either way, like, you hopefully don't lose lifelong fans over one song.
Oh, absolutely, and that's why I'm a big fan of bands that tell stories, like Coheed and Cambria or September Morning. Bands that do nothing but concept albums and spend the time to make it flow. Or and with those two bands in particular, they also write comic books to go along with those albums. And those are some of the best albums I've heard in a long time. Because again, you have to listen to song 1 through 12 in order to get that full experience.
You don't have the context otherwise.
Exactly. I mean, I had the lead singer of September Morning on not too long ago, and that was their exact sentiment. It's like, why am I going to write an album, 10 decent songs, when I can write 10 good songs and write a comic book about it as well, and and appeal to the masses and make people want to listen to my music even more. Why am I just going to give them 2 or 3 good songs and then a bunch of filler shit just to make a full album? I'm not going to do that. And I'm glad, somebody finally said it, because it's the truth. It's hardcore truth, and that's why I love Claudio as well from Coheed and Cambria, because he puts so much time and effort into every single one of his albums and so much time and effort into every single one of his comics to make it work cover to cover. And that's something you don't see very often.
I also think that is sort of appeals to the progressive market really well too, because you're talking about a really artistic market to begin with. It's I hate to even equate it to this, but it's like, it's the nerds. We're the Dungeons and Dragons crew. It's like the people who sat huddled in basements with their buddies playing Magic the Gathering and stuff like that. Like that's the crew that listens to progressive nerdy metal like that, and it's great. There's nothing wrong with that. I was one of those guys too, so
yeah. I mean, I'm a huge comic book nerd, and I mean, that's how I got turned on to Coheed and Cambria. I was in the comic book store one day and I saw this book called The Artery Wars. I'm like, the hell is this? And I picked it up and I was like, oh wait, they make music too? And then next thing I know, I'm listening to Welcome Home on a little car ride home, and I'm like, holy shit, man. What the hell is this?
You shouldn't listen to that while you're driving. You probably just go straight through a brick wall at 150 miles an hour.
That is one of those songs that no matter when it comes on, I just crank it up. Yeah, but then I hear the song, and then I have to like pull over, and I'm like, okay, let me pull on my Amazon list here. Let me just play the whole album. Fuck it, because you can't, because that album has so many good songs on it. I mean, it's like, damn. It's just, and that's what I miss about music in general. Where you can just listen to an album cover to cover, and be happy about it. But there's so much timelines and this and that, and Sony or BMI just sitting there going, hey, get this done. Okay, we're gonna get this done. But when you release a single, or when you're indie, you make sure you put your lifeblood into it. And there's so many good bands that I've talked to in the last 2 months that have done nothing but indie bands, that has just been, because they're just trying, they're putting every blood, sweat, and tear that they've had in their body for the last year into one song, and then they turn around and do it again, and then they turn it again, and it's just like, damn. And this past Friday, like I mentioned in the beginning, I had a charity concert for Toys for Tots, and I had the opportunity to have some big bands on here, or just come on with acoustic guitar or whatever the case might be, but I'm like, no, I want all the bands that I've had on my show that are indie on this card. And that's exactly what I had. I had 13 indie bands come on, and rock out hard, and it was fucking phenomenal, and I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I've learned so much more. I mean, I like to consider myself a minor musical historian, but this year I've learned so much more about the music business than I've ever had in my life, because the people that I've been talking to, and the passion that they have, and the influences they have, and what they're doing, just means so much more to them. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that passion still lives in that middle ground, still fighting for their way back into the light at all,
Yeah, I mean, because next year, if things start, looking up, and, people are able to tour, and concerts that get announced, and this and that, you know, when these indie bands are now competing with them, I think it's going to be even better, you know, because they're going to be like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
I remember these guys from last year when they, you know, when Avenged Sevenfold abandoned me, or when Seven Dust abandoned me, or whatever the case might be. But then now I've got, you know, oh, look, these guys were badass last year. They were still around. Let's go ahead and listen to them and listen to these other guys and all this other stuff. And I think it's going to be even better for the music business come next year. I really do.
Yeah, I would say probably it leveled the playing field a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, without having the massive influence of these big touring bands and stuff. It's maybe allowed people to branch out. I mean, they're finding all their music online. You know, they're listening to these radio stations. They're stumbling into new artists. And, you know, I hope that a lot of people stumble into the cover that we did for Losing My Religion and find themselves becoming actual Villains fans, because that'd be the dream, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to attach it to the podcast, so people will be able to listen to it when I air the podcast. And I'll get a copyright strike, but whatever. That's what sponsorships are for. I won't be able to monetize the album, the show, but I can still get my sponsorship money. But you know, it's fine because, you know, again, you're right. You guys have leveled the playing field, and it's so nice because, again, in the coming year, you know, right now the only thing that's been announced is Aftershock in October of next year, and bunch of tours have been announced for Europe, but, you know, nothing really here yet, you know, as far as I know. There might be some pop stuff or, you know, some country or, you know, rap stuff that I'm unaware of, but as far as like the rock stuff goes, there's nothing lined up for next year except for Aftershock in October. So I'm hoping, you know, once everything starts going around, you know, some of these indie bands that have busted their ass this year to make a name for themselves while nobody else is around, they say, oh, let's go ahead and get these on the card. Let's go ahead and get these guys on the card. Let's go ahead and get these on the card. And
Hey, we got added to Whackin' Radio this week, so
yeah, I saw that.
who knows? Pretty cool.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's phenomenal. So, you know, where do you think, you know, things are going in the next year? I mean, what is your opinion? You've been around the scene a long time. So, I mean, what do you think is going to happen in the next year with everything?
Well, you know, I hate to say it, but I think things still are going to get a little worse before they get better. You know, I think just based on the cues that's coming through the news, I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not really, you know, liberty to speak on anything like that. But I think that people are really dying for the music. Like, that's a bad choice of words. People are really in for the concert experience, and that, you know, that experience of just interaction and music, the intensity, the emotion, the feeling of being in a room full of people singing at the top of your lungs and stuff. And like, you know, with everything going on, I think it's gonna obviously have to be a little while, you know, until we can get a handle on this stuff. But you know, my hope is that music won't go anywhere. I mean, people need it now more than ever. I think that we still find that connection in each other, whether it be, you know, over a Zoom call or while we're just putting out some headphones and escaping from reality for a little bit with a good song, you know, or maybe that's the motivation you need on the treadmill to run that extra half mile, you know, or whatever it may be. You know, I think that times of stress and pain like this are great for creativity. So I really hope that people are just, you know, going through the pendulum swing. I know in the beginning, I went through this myself. I went through like a really heavy swing of negativity and depression and just feeling at a loss. And, you know, I kind of swung back the other way and found the positive side of things. And every once in a while I swing back towards the middle. But, you know, I just hope that people are taking advantage. And like you said, you know, finding what makes them happy. And in a lot of cases, it means connecting to your childhood and who you used to be, because it's exactly who you are still. And that's kind of a forgotten path that people just in the process of growing up forget who they are. And it's easy to do, but, you know, times like this allow for a lot of introspection and a lot of time to really just like think and feel and experience the world and, you know, change your outlook. So my hope is that, you know, this ends up in a lot of ways helping people find new direction, and, you know, like you finding this podcast and finding a new outlet for your comedy and for your voice, and for me trying to create music and, you know, that has emotion and depth. And, you know, I think that by the end of next year, if we don't have music back, people are going to be like losing their minds. So
Oh, absolutely.
I sincerely hope that by the end of next year, we are able to experience concerts in some capacity, whether, you know, whatever that means. But I also see a lot of artists stepping it up and doing digital, you know, increasingly interesting digital performances and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My buddy Tyler from Danger Kids has a project called Myth, and he did this incredible thing with lights out in the desert. And, you know, they went out in Joshua Tree with a bunch of big digital displays and lights, and they did this live performance. And just like, you know, they kind of pushed the envelope. They did something super cool and unique. I saw the band Avoid did something like that the other day too. You know, these kind of really interesting, colorful, you know, almost reminds me of like the visualizers back in the day, but it brings like an energy to the music.
Yeah.
And so, you know, nothing will replace the act of actually being a live experience. And I hope that comes back soon, but I'm also intrigued and excited for the direction of growth that this is going to create for new digital content for music in general.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, back in June or July, Trivium did one as well. They rented out a sound stage and did a full, you know, lights and everything like that concert at one of the sound stages in Full Sail in Orlando, which was really cool. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of bands that are doing that, and I think that's really freaking cool. You know, again, but you don't see a lot of the major acts doing that, unfortunately, which sucks. I mean, the biggest one that's done it this year was Corey Taylor, which he rented out the entire freaking, you know, Forum Arena to do, but then he still charged, you know, $40 a ticket, which was like, dude, come on. I did pay my $40 and I did watch the damn thing, but it was cool. It was something to do. But you know, again, it's, you know, but it's not, you know, I think it's just the arts in general. Yeah, music is a big part of that, but you know, whether it be a comedy show, whether it be Broadway, whether it be a play, or whether it just be going to see, if you're an opera or orchestra fan, you know, regardless of it all, you know, the arts and entertainment has taken a huge hit this year. And I think a lot of people took that for granted. You know, oh, we're always going to have Netflix. Oh, we're going to always have Hulu. And then all of a sudden we have Disney Plus or whatever the case might be. But there's been a lot of shortages this year on, you know, new content. So they've been forced to do other things and find other outlets. And there's a lot of small creators out there that are doing great things this year. And, you know, again, those small creators have done everything they possibly can to get a name for themselves and entertain the masses. So, you know, whether it's an indie band or whether it's a small, you know, comedy skit creator on YouTube, whatever the case might be, hats off to you for doing everything you can to keep people happy, you know?
That's right.
So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's all about the people and keeping the people happy.
Yeah, we'll come out of this year, and you know, I think we still have a little bit of a road ahead of us, but I'm looking forward with a lot of optimism to the small changes and that will, I think, ultimately create a better music world in general.
I absolutely agree with you, man. 100%. Dude, again, my hat's off to you on the cover. It sounds amazing. And the music video itself for it is badass. You know, the astronaut and all that other stuff, it's freaking amazing. So
I want to give a shout out there if I can. The two guys that worked on this video with me, the astronaut stuff is all actually digital art. I don't know. A lot of people didn't even realize that. They're watching it, they thought it was all filmed. That was all CGI.
Was it really? Holy shit.
Yeah, it really was. The guy is an incredible artist. He goes by the name Cameron. His name is Cameron Burns. And he has on Instagram, he's Captive Art, but just an incredible like 4D motion graphics designer. And I worked with an incredible videographer director named Lance Gregar here in Arizona, and yeah, just the two of those guys working together, it was so amazing. They really just blew that away.
They
I think
really
when people
did.
watch it now, they're like, holy crap, like that astronaut's not a real person.
I thought it was. Holy crap. Damn.
Yeah.
They pulled off some sick shit then. But either way, the link for the video is in the description of the video and the podcast. And, you know, it's fantastic. Go listen to it. You know, I know how many views are on there now. If I don't see an additional 50,000 in the next 2 weeks from you people, I'm gonna be pissed because that's how many downloads of this damn show gets every damn day. So I know that there's people listening. So click the freaking link in the bio.
Yeah. Watch it.
Yes.
It's cool. Astronauts rule.
Exactly. But you know, aside from astronauts ruling, you guys rule, and I cannot wait to see what you guys do next because it's gonna be badass. I can already feel it, especially with what you said earlier. What was the name of the song that you said earlier about
Smile Through the Pain.
Smile Through the Pain.
I'm
Yeah,
planning on releasing pretty soon here.
Yeah, so I can't wait for that. You know, and my hat's off to you again, man. Good luck to you, and I wish you nothing but the best in the new year. I hope you and your family have a great Christmas or whatever you celebrate, and just keep on creating, man.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek. It's
No
been a real
problem.
pleasure being on your show.
Yeah, no problem, man. I hope the dentist does a good job on your teeth today.
Oh, man. Yeah. Me too.
Wisdom teeth suck, let me tell you. But
Yeah. I know. I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, less than an hour, and I'll be laying on the table getting my teeth ripped out. Woo!
woo,
What a day.
what a day it has been. Hey, at least you had a little bit of fun beforehand, right?
Had a lot of fun beforehand. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, no problem, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck with the dentist, and good luck with everything else you got going on, man.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
No problem. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, and that is it for me for today on a Monday edition of Suck It Podcast. Whew, what a day, what a day, what a day. I want to see something real quick before I go. Is everything done here? Let's see. So as of now, which is 6:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it is official. Biden has clinched the White House, and he is officially the president-elect. So whether you love it or hate it, I just wanted to give you guys that update. And that's it. But it is what it is. So again, whether you love it or hate it, it's over. It's done. So hopefully we now can get back to being Americans and stop fighting. Can we just do that, please? I just want to get back to being Americans and stop fighting. I just want to love each other. Just want to be happy again. So whether you, again, hate the results or love the results, let's just get back to being human and Americans. So come back tomorrow for the band from Atlanta called Heatherset. And then Wednesday's the big one. Comedian Steve Hofstetter will be on the show. And then Thursday, the band, the Keystones, will be on the show. And then Friday, Chain Flower will be on the show as well. So full week again. So come back tomorrow for another edition of Suck It. But until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and as always, stay heavy. And definitely check out the cover of Losing My Religion below. But until then, I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.